They were the ghosts behind enemy lines, the women who vanished from ordinary lives to rewrite the fate of nations. During the chaos of World War II, while bombs split the sky and cities burned, another war unfolded quietly. One fought not with armies, but with whispers. This is the untold story of the women who became shadows, whose courage was disguised as fragility, whose weapons were silence, disguise, and nerve. Most of them were never honored. Some never came home. And for decades, their names were erased, classified, buried under the stories of men. But history has a way of leaving traces, and tonight we follow them. They weren't soldiers. They were nurses, teachers, secretaries, fluent in languages, quick with intuition. When Britain's Special Operations Executive, the SOE, began recruiting for agents in occupied France, they needed people who could blend in. Men stood out. Women, it turned out, could move unseen. That's how women like Vera Atkins, a Romanian-born intelligence officer, found themselves at the heart of the secret war. Atkins was brilliant, methodical, and relentless. She would help select and train dozens of women to infiltrate Nazi-occupied Europe, and she'd live with their fates for the rest of her life. Among them was a 29-year-old woman named Noor Inayat Khan, a quiet, soft-spoken writer and musician. She was descended from Indian royalty, raised on ideals of peace, and had never fired a gun. Yet she volunteered to become Britain's first female wireless operator sent into occupied France, one of the most dangerous roles in espionage. The average life expectancy for a radio operator in the field? 6 weeks. Paris, 1943. The city was under Nazi control, alive with fear and suspicion. Noor arrived under a false name, Jean-Marie Renier. Her job? To transmit messages back to London. Coordinates, sabotage plans, coded reports from resistance cells. Every key she pressed on her wireless set could mean death. German patrols roamed the streets, tracing radio frequencies, triangulating signals. If they got close enough, they'd come in, guns drawn. But Noor was fast. She was clever. When her network was betrayed and most agents fled or were captured, she refused to leave. She moved constantly, rooftops, basements, abandoned attics, transmitting under moonlight, changing frequencies by instinct. For 3 months, she was the only line between London and the resistance in Paris. One woman holding together an entire network of fighters. She was eventually captured, but even then, she refused to give up names. When interrogators demanded her real identity, she said only, "I am loyal to my country and my people." She was executed at Dachau in 1944. Her last word, witnesses said, was liberté. Noor was just one of many. Across Europe, hundreds of women worked as couriers, saboteurs, double agents, and codebreakers, each with their own story. There was Virginia Hall, an American who had lost part of her leg in an accident, but went on to become one of the most feared Allied spies in France. The Gestapo called her the most dangerous of all Allied agents. She used crutches to climb mountains, disguised herself as a peasant woman, and coordinated resistance attacks with a wooden leg she nicknamed Cuthbert. By the end of the war, she had helped organize thousands of fighters and slipped past Nazi capture again and again. And there was Odette Sansom, tortured brutally by the Gestapo for months. They broke her bones, burned her with hot irons. She said nothing. When her captors threatened to kill her, she looked them in the eye and said, "You can only kill me once." Each of these women operated in fragments, isolated, anonymous, even invisible to one another. They never got medals or fanfare. They were told to disappear, to resume normal lives, to carry their secrets to the grave. But together, they formed something extraordinary, a network of women who weaponized intelligence, intuition, and quiet defiance. After the war, the world moved on. Men returned home as heroes. Women were told to forget, to go back to kitchens, to erase what they'd done. Files were sealed. Names were redacted, and so, for decades, the stories of women like Noor, Virginia, and Odette lived only in fragments, declassified reports, faded photos, whispered family memories. It wasn't until historians, journalists, and survivors began speaking decades later that these lives re-emerged, revealing just how deeply women had shaped the outcome of the war. They weren't just helpers or messengers. They were architects of deception, destroyers of supply lines, masterminds of code. And perhaps most haunting of all, many were never identified, buried under false names, lost in prisons, vanished on secret missions. Their records simply say, missing in action. Somewhere, beneath the weight of history, lie the unmarked graves of women who changed its course. When we talk about war, we often think of power, of tanks, battles, victories measured in land or lives. But maybe courage looks different than we imagine. Maybe it's the woman who walks into enemy territory with a false passport and a radio hidden in her suitcase. Maybe it's the quiet refusal to speak, even when silence costs you everything. These women didn't fight for glory. They fought because someone had to. Because resistance, in its purest form, is not loud. It's not grand. It's a whisper in the dark that says, I will not disappear. The hidden history of female spies in World War II isn't just about war. It's about the boundaries of courage and the human capacity to fight for freedom in ways the world was never meant to see. And maybe that's why their stories matter. Because sometimes the most powerful heroes are the ones history tried to forget.